So a few weeks ago, I finished my first narrative short film, Happy Times. I wanted to kind of sit down and talk through my experience as a first-time director and share a few things that I learned. One of my main concerns was, am I going to be able to pull off this concept? So for those of you who haven't seen the film, it is a story about twin sisters and their childhood, but told from the perspective of their feet. So we don't have a single face that was shown in the whole film. So it was a challenge thinking through, how am I going to evoke emotion and tell a full narrative story without relying on seeing someone's face. So, I haven't seen really anyone do this before. I did some research and found some foot montage type videos, but I never really found a good reference of someone telling a complete story from that perspective. I was excited to feel like I had stumbled upon a new idea, but at the same time, I was kind of overcome with fear of like, is there a reason why no one's done this before? Is it possible? Is it going to work? Is it going to be boring? Am I going to be able to get the emotion across that I wanted to show? So, just a little backstory of where the idea came from. My wife and I have a 2.5-year-old son and a 4-month-old son, and they both sleep in bed with us. And the oldest lately has just been keeping me up at night, kicking me. And I remember, a couple months ago, had stayed up late editing something, and my wife and kids were already asleep. And I remember kind of going into bed and kind of honestly just dreading going to sleep, knowing that I was probably going to be woken up by him kicking me. So I think, this subconscious thought of like his feet, kind of in my head when I was laying down. And I remember specifically laying my head down on the pillow, and kind of out of nowhere, I just had this concept of telling someone's story from their feet. And it sounds so weird, and looking back on it, it just doesn't really make sense because I honestly haven't done a lot of narrative stuff before. So it's like all of my work has been, pushing a product or in the commercial space or given a brief or documentary where I have a clear idea or concept already. So it's like I'm still so new to narrative or fiction and, really having no restrictions on story. So I don't know how other creatives are, but I rarely just get this random spark of an idea out of nothing, right? So it felt special. It felt different. And I knew that I needed to do something about it. So I decided to sit up and take my phone and just start writing out different foot shot ideas I had. So there was, just like random things like dancing or painting toenails or running or stuff like that. And it was just, I don't know, an idea of like 10 to 15 ideas just written out to just get them out of me. And I was like, cool. All right, I'm just going to put this out into the world on my phone and go to bed. And I remember waking up and the idea was still interesting. So I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something. If, it made it through the night, maybe there's something there. So I kept kind of just thinking about it throughout the day and kind of talked with some friends about it. And the more I processed it, I really wanted to challenge myself with telling a complete story of at least a character, right? That wasn't just random feet perspective shots. When doing that, I was kind of just thinking through like, all right, well, if the character is a girl, then she'll probably have more options to wear wardrobe-wise or with shoes. So I decided, okay, I'll tell the story of this girl. Like maybe it's her childhood to life to death. Really, is kind of like what it started as. Is like, can I tell her full life story, a human story through the character of this girl? The concept started to evolve, and I brought it to my friend Preston, who was the writer and producer on this film, and kind of had just pitched him the idea like, hey, like, he's had a lot more experience in script writing with features and TV and narrative stuff. So I kind of came to him like, hey, this is the idea I have. Do you want to help me turn this into a script? And was grateful that he took the time to really bring this to life and kind of take my idea and translate it into script form. So when we started working on the script and kind of processing this together, I just started to think through, like, what are some key life moments, and thinking through big things like wedding day or prom or a breakup. And I wanted to really focus on the ups and downs in life, like not just telling all these happy things, but what did this character struggle through? Like, life is full of challenges. Like, what did she go through? And naturally in that, I just started thinking of, maybe some traumatic things that might have happened to her that like shaped her character. And in that, I just couldn't stop thinking about my wife and her story. And she has a very real traumatic childhood. And I just kept thinking of her and her experiences. And I kind of just was talking with Preston. I was like, well, what if I just, told her story? Like, used a lot of, real events and truth behind it. But with that is, my wife is a twin. So all of these all these traumatic experiences are shared with her sister. So, to add the extra challenge of not just showing faces, I wanted to tell both of their stories. So, that kind of lended to the challenge of like, all right, how do we cast younger versions of these twins, and how do we get baby twins and younger twins? And I was a little bit worried about the possibility of who we can cast to do this just realistically, but I figured that I could talk my wife and my sister-in-law into acting their own characters. So once Preston and I kind of got the concept together, I decided that I wanted to enter it in the music bed challenge. And for those of you watching this video, unfortunately we didn't make it to the finals, and still pretty bummed about it. But I knew that wasn't the sole reason of doing this, that although I wanted to win this contest and I wanted to share it, the most important thing was just to make it. So I knew that if I never gave myself a hard deadline, which was, I more or less did this in less than a month. I was able to concept, write, shoot and edit, and enter this film in a very short period. But if I would have never had that deadline, honestly, I probably would have tried to tell the full human story from birth to death, and it would have very quickly just got way out of scope of what was realistic with budget or time or just my skill set. So having that hard deadline really gave me a clear vision of like, okay, we can probably at most shoot in 1 to 2 days. So that's going to limit me to how many scenes I can have. And, I just thinking through their story, I knew I wanted to focus primarily on their childhood, since that was, the most traumatic period of their life, and what I thought had a lot of depth and would be the most relatable to a lot of people. So Happy Times was the name of the real daycare that their first memory happened at. So the kind of traumatic scene where the father comes in and takes them from school, the name of that school was Happy Times. So I was so excited to finally like have this title that meant something, because I think for like the longest time when I was writing it, we had If Feet Could Talk or something dumb like that as like a working title. So there was a lot of irony and contrast of this time in their life that was meant to be happy. This place that was meant to be happy was not, and it really marked them and the rest of their life. So, solidified the story and really meant something to me and the girls. So yes, that's just a little backstory on like the concept, kind of where it came from. My father-in-law is still alive, thankfully. So I did kind of want to fictionalize something where like the majority of the film takes place at the death of the father, at the funeral, because all of the other events that were shown were true stories. So after this kind of house party scene and this cheating situation that happened, my wife and her sister didn't speak for a while, although it wasn't 12 years. I did want to kind of set the story in that perspective of, if there was never forgiveness between them, and all this time had passed with them not forgiving each other, well, where would their relationship be, so, and also like what would cause them to make amends. So most of my filmmaking background is primarily as a DP and operating a camera with a much smaller crew than what I had for this film. So going into this, I was really worried or interested to see like how much would I miss holding the camera. In the past, I think I just haven't surrounded myself with people that are better than me. So oftentimes I kind of want the control of operating or being in charge of the final image because either a lack of trust, knowing that Carlo is going to be a part of this project. I knew that wasn't going to be a worry. But at the same time, it's like I have this genuine love and passion for gear, for cameras, and I do love it, but I know that directing and writing is what I want to focus more on as I grow. And in order to do that, like, I have to start letting go of the camera. So I'm trying to challenge myself more this year to shoot less and to just start building that trust and building my communication skills and being decisive and being able to explain clearly the vision that I have. At first, it was like, it was kind of weird, like watching someone else hold the camera and not being in that position. But I think looking back on it, I was so overwhelmed and busy with the million other things that I had to do with directing talent and thinking through a story that there's no way that I would have been able to operate and direct at the same time. So it was really encouraging for me to kind of get that real directing experience, even on a smaller scale, and still be really excited with the outcome. I actually didn't miss it near as much as I thought. I'm grateful that I didn't shoot it because I think it is a lot better than I could have done, and I really enjoy the opportunity to just be very intentional with directing the talent and very careful with thinking through character motivations and just being more focused and not having to worry about settings or camera movement and things like that. It was really a great experience to just watch someone better and further along than I am do a job that I typically would do. I will say the hardest part of this entire project was by far producing it. So I was very, very lucky to bring on Blaine as a first AD. This was my first experience having a first AD, and man, let me tell you, it is a game changer to not have to be so focused on schedule and what scene is next and how much time I have left, and I can just stay fully immersed in the story and in the characters without having to be so worried about schedule and timeline. On top of that, he was just able to, essentially execute this whole film. So I was way over ambitious with the amount of locations and talent that I had in all of this, but even in these kind of unrealistic expectations, he was able to, talk me into shooting in his hometown where he had a lot of these connections, a lot of these locations. So he was able to get us a funeral home and a church that we used. He was able to get us cops because his dad was a retired police officer, and access to his elementary school that we went in. He knows a guy that has a casket. Like, this is the most connected person that I've ever met in my life. And he carried so much weight when it came to coordinating with talent and location. But even with all of the work and effort he put into that, there's still so much more producing that had to happen with coordinating with the crew and dealing with rentals and making sure that wardrobe was together. And I didn't have, a massive crew. I think we had, I guess, a total of like 12 of us, which is still pretty crazy and a lot bigger than what I typically run. But still, with that, I had to carry a lot of weight on the producing side, and it took up a lot of my time and energy and focus. And looking back on it, I realized that I don't like producing, and that it is a very hard part of the job. And I at least know now that like it's something that I can do, but it's something that I definitely would love more help with in the future, of not having to stress and deal with like all of the logistics of everything. But I think it is very important to at least have some type of understanding of what's realistic or not, So I will say the next narrative piece that I write is gonna have one location and like one or two talent, and it's gonna be nothing but faces, and we're gonna be able to do it in a day and not have, I don't even know how many locations we had, over 10 probably, with 10 plus different cast members. It was a lot. So once we finished the film, I had roughly 3 to 4 days to edit the whole thing to get it submitted in time for this contest. So it was some long nights, some 3 a.m. edits for sure. Unfortunately, just with the scale and time frame of the project, I wasn't able to get any help on the post-production side as far as edit or color or mix. We didn't run time code or anything, so like syncing audio with scene numbers and takes, and with a slate and everything. So it took a little bit of like work to clean it up and kind of get it together. But as far as like sequencing the story, like my philosophy on editing is that like it should be a simple thing, right? So it's like if you've done the work in pre-production and you've put in the time to have a good script, it's kind of just like putting it together like a puzzle, right? So it wasn't necessarily difficult to sequence. It was just making the most of the coverage that I had. So with the main dialogue that took place on the exterior of the funeral home, we had very little time because we started an hour late, and the lines were taking longer than I anticipated to get through, that we ended up having pretty little coverage. So it was a struggle to find just ways to cut in and out of things. Thankfully, this whole film never shows a face, so I had so much luxury of moving, dialogue around in the edit because I'm not syncing it to anything. It just had to really match the emotion and body language of the feet. So was able to kind of have some wiggle room there on cutting things, but you quickly forget the importance of continuity and all the micro movements that happen when you're trying to piece together multiple takes, with like what foot is, in what position, is it slightly to the right or left, and there was definitely some inconsistencies that hopefully you guys can't see, but I did the best that I could with what I had. 60-70% of the film takes place on the exterior of this funeral home, and with my poor location scouting and choices, happened to be a very beside a busy road on a windy day, so we had awful audio when it came to like the main dialogue that we needed. So we didn't really have time for ADR stuff. So literally on day 2, we ran through the entire script inside of our first AD's car outside of the location, and kind of just read through it line by line, like you would like at a table reading. But we really had to focus on performance and emotion. But with that, it's like you're completely stripping the ambient room tone of being outside because you're in a car, right? It took a lot of work to try to recover as much ambient room tone as I could to like try to get it to match up with hearing these people speaking and it sounding like they're outside. So editing the audio was a lot of work, but I'm pretty proud with where it's at. Like, I know it's not the best mix, I know it's not perfect, but At the end of the day, we told a full story that had hopefully moves you emotionally, and we did it in 2 days. And it was edited in a few days after, and we finished something. So that's kind of what I'm trying to remind myself. Like, concept alone, I'm proud that I committed to it and that I did it. And I think that it's a compelling story that is still entertaining and emotional, and is done in a way that's different from what we typically see. So yeah, so that's pretty much that. That's a few thoughts of shooting my first narrative short film. I know that it's not perfect and that I learned a ton, and I'm super excited for the next project. So thank you guys for watching the film. If you haven't, please make sure to click on it somewhere here. I'll link it and check it out. And I have a bunch of BTS as well that we were able to shoot, so you can kind of get a little more insight to what went behind it. But thank you guys for watching. See you on the next one.